You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Mutegi K. Martin. Welcome back. You're still watching KUTV Primetime News, and we are back with this particular conversation that involves Kenya's economy matters COVID-19 pandemic. And Kenya was hit and is still being hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, just like many other nations around the globe. As part of the COVID-19 measures, both local and international trading was inhibited, and the same applied to local and international traveling due to the local lockdowns such as we have even now, and international bans such as what we see with the United Kingdom. Many livelihoods in the form of businesses and jobs depended on running of learning institutions, entertainment joints and events, even churches and mosques. The central bank lowered rates to cushion businesses and citizens in general, and other companies that handle monetary transactions followed suit. Still, the economy was doing badly. A time came when the economy was coming up, but we were still grappling with challenges in the health sector that consequently affected our normal lives and businesses. The country's fiscal and debt positions have gone to the dogs. This is where the International Monetary Fund, IMF, stepped in to give our country a loan that would be used to support the government's reform plans and help meet its financial needs. Yes, a lot has been happening with the country's economy, and we are here to point out some important issues that we need to know and solutions that may improve our situation. For this reason, we are joined by Joe Gashira, the founder of Inuka Leadership, a startup garage, to help us in that regard. Inuka Leadership Africa and Startup Garage, those are two different entities to help us in discussing this particular conversation. Karibu sana, Bwana Joe Gashira.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for having me again.
It's good to have you back. By the way, Joe Gashira was my first guest here on KUTV Primetime News, and we spoke about the economy of the country in a time when everything was seemingly shaken in this particular country. But here we are to look at some of those things that are happening right now. And maybe we could go straight to the point and talk about the situation that we have. We have seen micro, small, and medium-sized business enterprises being affected by the COVID-19. Have they bounced back? Or where are we in terms of the MSMEs in the country?
Thank you, Martin, for that question. That's an excellent question. And so I think even before I answer that, it would be good to just provide a background and say that the MSMEs had been actually facing significant challenges for the last maybe like 5 years. So COVID in itself was not the cause of the challenges that the SMEs are facing. In fact, if you look at the last 5 years, there have been significant challenges. When you look at the 2017 election, we're looking at very heavy public borrowing, government borrowing. We're looking at like things like even the interest capping. And so startups and SMEs were facing significant challenges. And so I would say that COVID was the last nail to the coffin. Really, it is what now came to expose the underbelly of the issues that the SMEs were facing. And that having been said, I think it is also important to note that around 70% of businesses in Kenya, or SMEs, are actually in the wholesale and retail sectors. Okay. And you'd imagine that COVID has really affected, it has really made them suffer a huge tongue. And so I think recovery-wise and also looking at the second lockdown, we had started taking off, but then we took another dip. And so I think the prerogative here really is on the government to try and see how do we put in place policy. How do we provide an enabling environment for SMEs to operate, especially within the kind of environment we find ourselves? So bouncing back, I cannot say we are there yet, but government has a big role to play, even as we'll, I think, discuss later, as far as this is concerned. So it's really going back and seeing these problems were there. But then COVID came and hit the last blow. So a lot of policy need to be changed, a lot of frameworks need to be adjusted, just to make sure that we are supporting SMEs. And by the way, SMEs contribute to 33% of the GDP of the country. So you can imagine they are a huge contributor to the economy of Kenya, as it were. And so I think the government needs to be serious about just looking into the affairs of SMEs and MSMEs, just making sure they are working right. Yes.
And talking of those, that particular lot of business people, someone might be watching and they want to join that lot that contributes to 33% of the GDP. I mean, you could be proud about doing something like that. But now, in the multitude of problems that you have spoken about, How is it safe to open a business, especially now focusing on the MSMEs? How safe is it to open a business now?
During this okay,
Yes.
right. I know very many people are afraid to open business, especially because of COVID and what has been happening. Of course, we've seen many businesses close down because of obvious reasons. We've seen hotels closed down. We've seen many businesses, even some schools and colleges closed down, of course, because education has been affected. And so is it the right time, really, to start a business? I would say yes and no, depending on which lenses you decide to view that from. And their business, definitely, you don't want to get into currently. Of course, you don't want to go into tourism and hotel, because we've seen hotels are closing down.
Yes.
Of course, we know there's been a major effect on that. But then again, I think it would be good for people to now begin to look at sectoral kind of adjustment and try to see which areas are not hard hit by these shocks when they come, because shocks will always come. You know, it might be COVID next time, it might be something else. And so is number one to see, let me start maybe for people who are in business. Maybe somebody is asking themselves, so how do I navigate this and continue to navigate? So number one is to really see, how do I pivot? And pivot is to say, how do I still offer the same or deliver the same quality of product and service, but using alternative means? And for instance, we've seen hotels, for instance, do that. We've seen they've already adjusted to doing deliveries. You know, and so if you look at things like Jumia Food, Jumia Eat, Uber Foods, and all these kind of things, they have really taken off, because again, they've taken advantage of this e-platform. When you look at pharmacies and chemists, My Dawa, for instance, is doing very well, because they've taken their pharmacy online. So this is just a way of pivoting and saying, how can I offer the same product, but using a different means? So not necessarily moving into another line or closing the business. Then number two is for those people who want to come in. So in this case, then you might want to consider, I call them opportunistic businesses. For instance, I usually say that every crisis provides opportunities, as much as there are many losses and they're regrettable. And so right now is an opportune time. I have a friend who opened a factory for making face masks, for instance. Opportunistic. You know, when you talk about PPIs, locally made, it's also a good place to, you know, to get into right now. When I think about agriculture, crisis or no crisis, people will need to eat. Especially now that we have been told about vitamin C and all these things. So farmers who are dealing with oranges, for instance, lemons. The other day I was in the market and I couldn't find any lemons.
They are on high demand right now.
And so if you're farming lemons and anything giving vitamin C, baobab and all these wellness things, you know, etc., then, you know, you're laughing your way to the bank. And so farming, even things like vegetables and food generally, we will need food. In fact, there's a food shortage. And as you so predicted the other day, we might face more in the coming days. And so anybody in agriculture, we are looking at things like ICT, definitely, because this one does not depend on what is happening on the ground, as it were. And so anybody on that ICT space is really making it big. So in short, what I'm trying to say is that businesses must find a way, or if you're coming in, then you must find a way of playing in that e-commerce platform. And e-commerce is to say, in simple words, you're taking your business to Facebook, to Twitter. You know, you're coming from the stall in town and, you know, bringing your business online. Think about businesses like last mile delivery. What one do this, people who do deliveries are making a kill, you know. And so it's good to see and try focus and see what are some of these opportunities that are there or are availed by such a shock. For internet service providers, anybody who is installing internet right now, because again everybody has moved to work from home, and so you can imagine you are consuming quite some bandwidth. And so anybody who comes with such a package, then you're sure, because we need a lot of internet to support all these Zoom meetings, Google Meet, etc., etc.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yes and no, depending on what pair of lenses you decide to look at it from.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, as people continue to do businesses, because you know, businessmen are known to be tenacious in terms of you know, wanting to make sure their businesses really succeed before they close down, even in the midst of challenges. We have seen you know, monetary bodies lowering rates of when it comes to transaction and handling money and taking money from here to there. That has really helped cushion some of the businesses by, you know, cutting off the cost of money, especially businesses that deal with transactional kind of way. What else can be done? What else do you feel the government and other monetary bodies can do to make sure that we get to cushion more people and citizens in general, because everyone is taking money here or there from time to time?
Yeah, absolutely.
What can be done to make sure that
happens? Definitely, Martin. So it would be good to mention that when we had the first wave, which was, I think, March last year.
Yes.
And that was followed by the lockdown. The government did actually introduce some stimulus package to help individuals and businesses. And at that time, I think they gave a stimulus package of 53.7 billion for businesses and individuals. And this was also accompanied by things like reducing of VAT from 16% to 14%. We saw the corporate tax being reduced from 30% to 25%. And generally other stimuli, right?
Yeah.
So that was a good move, and it definitely did help to cushion some businesses. And of course, if pay as you earn was also reduced the bans, and so people are taking much more money home, which means now you have more disposable income. So that, as far as that is concerned, the government did a good job. But during this second lockdown, we've not seen the government move with speed. And of course, it's understandable because, when you see the president coming to make these announcements, he didn't just wake up. This is actually things that must be sanctioned and go through parliament, And so maybe there was a delay in taking this kind of debate to parliament. And so we've not seen that. And also this one was an open-ended one in that we don't know when it will end. So it's caused a lot of uncertainty. But be that as it may, I think it is also worth noting, which is a main concern actually, that 79% of businesses in Kenya, or SMEs, are actually informal. In other words, these are people we refer to as a grey economy. These are people like the border riders. You're looking at your mamambogas. You're looking at your juakali artisans. These are guys who are not probably even registered as businesses, right? And so when you think about the reduction of VAT and all these other stimulus packages, they definitely didn't get down to these people. They didn't trickle down to these people. Remember, this is 79%, right?
Yes.
And so for me, it would be a challenge to say, how can government make sure that we are tailor-making the stimulus package to fit the kind of businesses that are in our country or in our economy? We cannot just go and fish something that is working in the US and come and try to apply it in Kenya just for the sake of it. We must really use this data and say, if 75% are in the grey economy, what kind of stimulus package? So this VAT and pay as you earn, yes, worked, but for the large or medium-sized companies, but not for SMEs. And so maybe considering things like cash grants, and I know this might be hard to administer, but I'm sure even these Juakali artisans and even these mamambogas are organized in some forms. Maybe they have some chamas where the government can actually use them to channel some of these to channel some of these monies. I think the other thing I would say is that, or maybe even commend government, I've seen them introduce an SME toolkit to help SMEs, So this is like a one-stop shop to help them, SMEs navigate through the challenges that they face. So this is from inception to coming to market and how to interact with market, etc., etc. And so I think those are some of the interventions I think that would work to really further cushion the SMEs, especially.
Definitely. The next question I want you to answer very shortly, because you had mentioned something about the hotel and tourism industries, which have been hard hit, as you say. Are there any other sectors in the country that have been hard hit that we might not have known of? And are we in a second shock? Is the economy being affected harder than the first time? Or how would you compare the first shock and this that could probably be the second shock?
Okay, definitely the economy is continuing to suffer a lot. I think it's still early days because the lockdown was just imposed maybe a week or so ago. And so we're still waiting to see the real effects of this lockdown. But definitely, just from a projection point of view, it will definitely cause a major shock, another shock to the economy. When you think about you asked about what other businesses have been affected.
Yes.
Definitely, transport has been affected a lot. When you think about things like Uber and Taxify, I mean, because of social distancing, guys are not using these services anymore. We've seen a dip in that. In fact, I was reading some data. The subscription of Swivel, I think, dipped by around 80% through the COVID period. And so you can imagine what is happening. And of course, most of the people are not even traveling because it is safer to stay at home. And so there's been a significant dip in this. When you look at institutions like banks, for instance, banks had offered moratoriums, and now they've had to restructure the loans that they've issued to people. Of course, that significantly affects their profit. Just 2 weeks ago, I think all banks released their first quarter reports, and you could see, I think only one bank reported a profit. And same goes for these mobile money lenders like Tala, who have had to waive like the late fees and stuff like that. And so they've really dipped into some losses. So this has affected the banking sector significantly as well. When you look at, of course, this is out there, entertainment. In fact, there was these guys got on Twitter the other day just trying to talk to the president and say, hey, can you open up our country? Because anybody who is doing parties, team building, events, these guys, conferences, they're no longer having anything happening for them. And some of these things, logically, you really can't take them online, as it were. And so these are some of the sectors in the economy that have really suffered great hits, even alongside tourism and hotel industry. Yeah,
definitely. And as we continue to look at this particular matter now, we have seen also some turbulence in this particular wave of COVID-19, even with our international neighbors. And we have seen a lot of trade being inhibited, every country wanting to play safe, and a number of people, or a certain country is not supposed to, people from a certain country are not supposed to cross over to this other side and all that. Seen issues with the UK now, issues with the US. And that means a lot of stuff that was going out of Kenya is not going out right now, and a lot of stuff that was supposed to be coming in, and people as well who bring some of these things. How far are we from being a self-sufficient nation, in that we can, like what Magufuli used to say, we have everything within ourselves. We can do trade within ourselves, within the country, and make sure that we get to make much more. How far are we from being self-sufficient as a country?
Well, again, self-sufficiency is a dicey discussion, especially in the Kenyan context, because self-sufficiency would mean that we are raising enough money to take care of our budget needs, just in simple terms. And so, again, this is not an issue that has been contributed to by COVID, right? Remember, even before COVID, these are problems that we were experiencing, even with trade.
Definitely.
And again, just like we were saying earlier, it is just our underbelly that has now been exposed, as it were. And so when I think about self-sufficiency, I'd want to note that, first of all, the Kenyan debt is now playing at around 7 trillion shillings, right? And so our economy is being driven by debt. Now, debt is not bad. What you do with that money you get from debt is actually what is a differentiator, or what changes the ball game. And so, for me, I would say we really also will will continue depending on these debts, because obviously with the close down of businesses due to COVID, of course, the tax money will not raise enough revenues. In fact, I'm waiting for the budget that is going to be read, because we're going to face a very huge deficit. And of course, deficit is normally filled using borrowing, which can be either domestic borrowing or international borrowing. And international borrowing is better, because if we borrow domestically, it will mean that government has taken all the money from the banks. And so SMEs and people will not be free flow of money in the economy and available for businesses. And so I think the government needs to, number one, talk to the creditor countries, and try also to, in the same way, renegotiate their loans and see if they can get some extensions.
Some relief, relief
maybe. Also explore grants, as I know the government is doing. So those are some of the ways that we can. But even beyond that, I think, Martin, the most important thing, again, as I mentioned, is how do we use this money? So again, it is funny to note that 30 to 50% of this debt we get actually goes to service other debts.
30 to 50%.
Imagine. And so it would be prudent to say, can we apply this money? Can we restructure, how our budgeting process is and make sure that this money that we get actually goes into, and I would advise the government to actually put it into SMEs because SMEs are able to generate 33%.
Yes.
And so we'd be able to quickly pay off that debt and be in a safer position. I mean, during Kibaki's era, the debt was significantly lower because I think he was an economist. But that's a conversation for another day. Yes, but those are, I think, things that government can explore.
Definitely.
Just to make sure that. But self-sufficiency, I would advise guys not to be very
ambitious about,
enthusiastic about it. It's still a long way to go.
So let's talk about these Kenyans who are signing a petition now to counter the loan that has been given by IMF to Kenya for this recovery that you're talking about.
Yes.
More than 230,000 people and counting are continuing to sign this petition. What do you?
I did sign the petition.
You did sign the petition.
Yes.
Yeah, we're now at 231,503. I'm following live. I have a tracker following live what's happening.
Yeah.
And guys are continuing to sign this particular petition.
Yeah.
What are the why? Why are Kenyans signing this petition? And a number of government officials have come out to say that this loan is necessary in order for this recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Kenyans are definitely angry, because for obvious reasons. As I said earlier, debt is not bad. How you use that debt is what makes the difference. And so Kenyans are very angry because they're saying we are borrowing money, yet this money is finding its way into people's pockets, of course, through corruption. Yeah. And so we are just holding the government to account because, again, remember, these we contribute to these taxes, and in that same light, it will be prudent for us to also make sure that we put the government to account as far as the usage of these taxes is concerned. Okay. Now, having said that, I think IMF has done a good thing to give. I might be stoned for this, but remember, this was actually designated giving, and as I was reading the report, it was to assist in anti-corruption efforts. Number two, it was to cushion government entities like KQ, from the adverse effects of COVID. Remember, KQ has been making significant losses as well. Yes. Number three was, of course, for pandemic response. I can't remember the fourth one. And so this was very designated giving. But then the better thing for government to do right now, and anybody who understands economy would know that, yes, infrastructural projects are good, but for now, they are not as important as things like social protection. And so government needs to move with speed and restructure, these budgets and say, okay, how can we redirect this money to health and to other things that actually are more pressing right now? We can always go back to the roads. Yeah. So what is the effect of maybe reallocating that money to health and to maybe getting vaccines? It would mean we have a healthy population, and so we will reduce the amount of money that the government is spending on hospitals and the whole health thing. So government right now needs to reprioritize and try to reallocate these particular monies into places that are needed. And most importantly, it must find a way to seal the holes, that are corruption. A lot of money is going down the drain through corruption. Right. So we must find a way to really reduce this public wastage of resources that is corruption. Yeah. Yes.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, time is up, and some of the questions I had for you, we may not have time for this particular conversation. Yeah. But I'm going to look for you, and we are going to answer some of these other questions that also keep coming up, much as the economy and how COVID-19 times are changing, and what even COVID-19 as a disease, as a pandemic, is opening our eyes to seeing what has really been happening. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, we take a short break right on KUTV Primetime News. That was Joe Gashira, the founder of Inuka Leadership Africa and Startup Garage, talking to us about the COVID-19 economy, as we may call it. But we take a short break. We'll be right back with more news. Don't go anywhere.